Hello everyone and welcome to another Whisky Wednesday with me, Phil. Now this week we've got something a little bit special. We are talking about Littlemill. This little sample bottle here. This was donated by a good friend of this channel, so thank you very much, sir, for the sample of Littlemill. This was the official 12-year-old bottling that came out a while ago now. There's been a few other official bottlings in the meantime, but this distillery has had, well, a bit of an odd past really. As far as we're aware, it's the oldest distillery ever established in Scotland, 1772 on record. I know Bow Blair apparently have some documents that date back to sort of 1749 when some beer was brewed. But officially, Littlemill, as far as we know, is the oldest distillery in Scotland, or established in Scotland. It's now gone, and there's been some very strange things happen at Littlemill over the years. So all the way up until the 1970s, they used to produce triple distilled whiskey. And then that kind of stopped. Littlemill is on the border of the lowlands and the highlands, but it was considered a traditional lowland style. They used to make 3 different types because they had loads of different sort of experimental things going on at the distillery. Dumbuck used to be a heavily peated style, and Dunglass was a traditional kind of lowland style. Both of those were discontinued in the 1970s. And at one point this distillery was owned by Hector Henderson, who found Kalila, but that was a very, very long time ago. These days, it's no longer there. It was burnt down, I believe, in 2004, and there is now just some houses and some flats there, I think. But I think it was officially dismantled in 1997, and it's now owned by the Loch Lomond distillery, who are slowly, in a way, becoming the Bruichladdich of the modern era. They're doing all types of weird and wonderful stuff that they can somehow get away with, but they're doing it, and I think it's fantastic. But these are owned by these guys, and this is the first Littlemill I've ever tried. So this was an official 12-year-old in what was kind of a yellow labelled bottle, and it's only 40% alcohol. This is a totally new thing for me. I've not tried this previously, so I have no idea what it should or shouldn't taste like. But here we go. Let's see what Littlemill has to offer. There's still some left in the sample bottle because there's not a lot of it kicking around, and you know, it's nice to have something a bit rare in the cabinet. So, Littlemill. No idea about colouring, no idea about chill filtration. If any of you do want to kind of update me on that, please feel free to, because I couldn't find anything on the internet. Let's have a go on the nose. It is a very light whiskey. I know they stopped triple distillation and began double distillation again in the 1970s. So this should be a traditional double distilled Scotch style. There you go, it's starting to warm up now. Just give it a look. It's quite cold in this room today. I forgot to put the heating on this morning, so it is a little bit chilly. Let's warm it up a little bit in the glass. I'm assuming it is just bourbon cask. There might be a tiny bit of sherry in there, but in terms of the notes I'm getting already, there's a little bit of honey and a little bit of lemon, a little bit of vanilla. So mainly bourbon cask orientated, one would assume. It's still got a bit of a spirity nature to it. As well as something I can't really put my finger on. It's almost like this is a very specific thing. I'm pretty sure most schools have this all over the world, but there's like we used to call it design and technology, or in America you might call it like woodwork or shop class or something like that. This reminds me. The smell, one of the dominant smells coming through there is it's slightly plasticky, but specifically it reminds me of when you have like a hacksaw and you're cutting through wood, and it gets to the point where the wood begins to sort of burn a little bit. You get that kind of heat from the friction of the saw on the wood. It smells a little bit like that. Really unusual. Yes, there's honestly not a lot on the nose. It's got a little, I've said already, it's a little bit spirity. It has a somewhat tequila-y note going on with it. Very, very subtle though. You just do get it though. It is present. It's got that warm kind of burning wood smell, and there's a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of honey, a little bit of lemon. If I'm being brutally honest with you, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Penderyn, which is a Welsh single malt, which is a really kind of unique thing in itself. Kind of lovely and fresh and light. This doesn't have the sweetness of Penderyn, certainly not the standard Madeira, but there are elements of it that remind me of sort of like the spirity side of Penderyn. So yeah, not a lot on the nose, but let's see if anything interesting happens on the palate. Well, it's certainly soft. I could be wrong with that being double distilled. It might be triple distilled. But that is the softest thing I've ever tried in my entire life. If I'm being honest with you, because it is, you know, a dead distillery, everything else I've previously tried from dead distilleries, such as Port Ellen and Brora, what else? Some other things kind of kicking around in there. But those are obviously the two big ones. Some Canvas as well, and some Dumbarton. They're grain distilleries. With the lowland distilleries, it tends to get shut down. I've had some Rosebank, and now I've had this. And this follows on quite similar to the official bottles of Rosebank that I've had. One being a 21 and the other one being a 12-year-old Flora and Fauna that came out a couple of which is obviously part of Flora and Fauna range. It is a very, 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 very delicate whiskey, but I don't mean that in the sense that it has a lot of flavours that are subtle. It's not like a Glenfarclas that's a very delicate, subtle whiskey. It's just extremely soft. There's not a large amount going on with it. It has a nice bit of butteriness, and again, mainly bourbon cask dominated, so there's those typical kind of vanilla, creme caramel, custard things going on. Now that could be down to the fact it's only 40% alcohol, because a 12-year-old, it should give quite a lot away. Most distilleries have a 12-year-old because it's somewhat of a staple piece. A lot of non-aged statements, like a lot of Brookladdick stuff, is, you know, sort of 6 to 12 years old, like the classic Laddie and that kind of thing. Even some of the Port Charlotte stuff. So it may just be because it's bottled at 40% that there's not a lot of it coming through, not a lot of flavour anyway. In a way, with that, I mean, if this is kind of a key example of what Littlemill was, and I don't mean this in a harsh way, but you can kind of see why it may have been kind of surplus to requirements. Just very, very delicate. But then again, that is a lowland style. You know, so that's soft, easygoing things. Apart from Glenkinchie, which is actually quite oaky. I really enjoy Glenkinchie. And Elsa Bay these days, which is obviously a slightly ashy, peated style of lowland from William Grant's. Anyway, back to the main point. The palate, very, 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 very delicate. I mean, like Auchentoshan delicate. No spice, no alcohol burn. Arguably, if you know, I don't like using this word, but it's arguably the smoothest whiskey you can buy out there, if you can find it. The palate, relatively short-lived, a little bit dry. Yeah, a little bit underwhelmed, to be honest with you. That is a little bit of a disappointment. That I thought there'd be a little bit more going on with it being a dead distillery. But then again, that could just be the romanticism and the connotation of thinking, oh, it's shut down and it's rare and it's special. to summarise, I think if you like really, really, really soft whiskey, if you don't want alcohol burn or if you don't want anything like that, Littlemill 12-year-old is the whiskey for you. I have no idea if it's still available. Like I said, this sample was donated to the channel by a good friend of the channel. So whether or not it's still widely available, I'm totally unsure of. But that is very light on the nose with smells that kind of remind me of being like in a high school wood shop or wood workshop. The palate is just a bit bland. There's not much at all, and the finish is light and a little bit dry. Yeah, honestly, to give it a solid score, it is a little bit below par, and because it is such, it's not necessarily sought after, but because it's in that collection of distilleries that don't exist anymore. I think this is fair in saying I'm going to give that a 6. It's alright. I mean, this is obviously just one bottling. It's the first Littlemill I've ever tried. There'll be other single cask examples that are cask strength and, you know, have a bit more going on the nose and a bit more going on the palate. But for that one specifically, yeah, that's a 6. I mean, in theory, think about it, like a 7 is an average. Like, if I give a whiskey a 7, it's a perfectly good, reasonable, affordable whiskey. It's just a bit below average, and it's very expensive too. I'd imagine that's probably about sort of 150 to 200 pound a bottle now if you can find it. So, yeah, Littlemill 12-year-old at 40% is a 6 out of 10. Quite underwhelming, bit of a shame. Hopefully, Loch Lomond, if there's any casks of it left, which there will be, they might release something a bit special in the next couple of years, which I can retry again. But yeah, there you go. Just because it's closed and a bit expensive doesn't mean it's the greatest whiskey in the world. But there you go, folks. Littlemill 12-year-old, 6 out of 10. Official Whisky Wednesday score. And hopefully you found this review a bit informative, and maybe it's opened your eyes to a few more things about closed distilleries and how they're not everything that a lot of people build them up to be. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you again next week. Bye.